But number one thing is to increase your self-esteem, you need to practice better self-compassion.
Yeah. Which is hard if you have low self-esteem.
We are talking about the self-compassion, self-esteem loop, because they are connected and they loop. Because the truth is, if we have good self-compassion, our self-esteem is higher. And the higher our self-esteem is, the more we're going to create self-compassion for ourselves. And it's a loop. And we can totally utilize that energy that's created in that loop. Both of those are very intertwined, and most people don't talk much about self-compassion. They talk more about self-esteem and know that they maybe feel low self-esteem. And if we have low self-esteem, usually it affects how we feel mentally. It affects our relationships, our, in general, also stress level. Our resilience is not as high if we have a low self-esteem. But number one thing is to increase your self-esteem, you need to practice better self-compassion.
Yeah. Which is hard if you have low self-esteem.
It is.
So it's amazing how it's just so connected, and it's that loop that you were talking about.
Yes. And if we're not practicing self-compassion, we are going to feel more anxious, more stressed, and it affects our relationships. I'm Heike Fallon. I'm a personal high performance coach, and I help my clients with their self-leadership, because you got to lead yourself first before leading others. And self-compassion is a fundamental component.
Yeah. I mean, that goes hand in hand with what you're doing.
Yeah.
My name is Shannon Passalacqua. I too am a high performance coach, and I help women heal after their grief from a miscarriage. And I'll dive into that really quickly, and then we can move into what you were talking about. Because I was thinking about self-compassion with the grief that I went through. And I didn't have compassion for myself. And I don't think that was affected because of my self-esteem. I think, when I was going through my miscarriages, I think I had pretty okay self-esteem. There was no reason for me to not. I think I didn't give myself grace or have compassion with myself and my body because I didn't know how to grieve correctly. And I think when we're going through something difficult, it's hard to have compassion for ourselves if we haven't practiced it. It was something I never had thought about. I had never thought about having compassion for myself. I had never thought about, okay, I need to give myself a lot of grace around this situation. I need to stop judging myself. I need to stop judging my body and how I was reacting to it. So I think, if there's anyone here who follows me or is going through their miscarriages, just know that you can have high self-esteem, but still be having a really hard time dealing with your miscarriages and possibly not giving yourself enough compassion. So I would stop and give yourself, let yourself, stop judging what you're going through and give yourself a lot of grace and compassion.
And that applies to any trauma.
Yeah.
Any trauma, but also all kinds of other areas in life. So obviously for anybody not gone through a miscarriage, or not necessarily as far as trauma, just generally feeling the lower self-esteem. So just to clarify right now, self-esteem is defined as how we value ourselves, how we see ourselves, versus self-compassion is how we treat ourselves. So what we actually do for ourselves. So negative self-talk obviously is one big component of it, but to increase self-esteem, number one thing is we need to start with better self-compassion. And that's usually where, we beat ourselves up, no matter what situation you might be in, not necessarily trauma. You made just even the, I shared before, I'm like, I used to have these long to-do lists, and at the end of the day, I beat myself up. Why didn't I get more done? What's wrong with me that I can't get all of it done? I should be superwoman getting it all done, and feeling bad about myself at the end of the day because I was just looking at the things I didn't get done and didn't celebrate the things that I did get done. And I felt awful. in the evening. And if you feel awful in the evening, it impacts your sleep too. So I had to learn to kind of shift that mindset. And that's a lot of clients, especially in more demanding positions or roles, or even, if you have multiple roles, like we are, business owners, but we also
Moms.
we're moms, we have different roles. So if you have to do a lot, if we're not celebrating the things we do get done, because we sometimes even don't realize all the things we're getting done. And it's just a super long list of things. And we just look at the things that we didn't get done. And so that negative feeling of like not accomplishing your to-do list is just part of not practicing good self-compassion.
And I think it's something that our society doesn't talk about, right? We don't, and maybe this is just as females or as women in general, like we're supposed to be able to do everything. I don't, I don't want to overgeneralize. But like, we've talked about at the beginning of the summer, I felt like I had to drop so many things from what I could do during the day because my kids were home. And I was beating myself up for it because I thought everyone else was going to be judging me. And I thought, okay, my business coach is going to judge me because I'm not getting this done. I thought, you were going to judge me because I can't make, all the calls. And I just, my husband was out of town, and I thought he was going to judge me because I couldn't make dinner every night, whatever. And I just kept beating myself up. And I remember, we talked about it. I was like crying before one of our videos, and you're like, give yourself a break. Like, you can't get it all done during the summer. And that's when I had to really stop and say, okay, the most important thing right now is taking care of my kids and taking care of myself, and everything else can happen later. And so I had to really focus on those things that were going to move me along in the day. So like my workouts are very important to me. Eating healthy is very important because I know that's going to make me feel better. And then in turn will give me the self-esteem to get things done. But it started with grace and compassion with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, well said. And yes, I've cried about it too. I just did it already a long time ago. And here's the thing is, I didn't used to celebrate myself. I thought that was really weird and
Yeah.
odd, like I'm not talking about celebrating yourself for your birthday. We've always done that.
Right. You don't have to open a bottle of champagne every time you send an email.
But the small fact of in the evening sitting down and just going, hey, you know what? I got this done. I got that done. And even if it's the little task that was dragged out, calling something, that I needed to take care of, and it was dragged already for a couple of weeks. You know what? Yes, I finally got it done, and I wrote it down as a celebration. And here's the thing, when you do these small kinds of celebrating yourself or feeling grateful or acknowledging yourself, there's actually neurotransmitter release in your brain. So oxytocin is one of them. And it helps to regulate our emotions better too. And that's why it actually helps also with stress and anxiety, because when we're more compassionate with ourselves, more grateful, more kind to ourselves because of those neurotransmitter releases, it all comes down more, even though you may not feel it in the moment as strong. But when you repeat it over time, it's a skill that anybody can learn, and you will, not that that is the only solving puzzle piece. Obviously, depending on how stressed you are, you might need to manage your energy differently throughout the day, but it's one component that you can do, very easy, very simple, to just acknowledge yourself for your accomplishments and celebrate those in a small version in the evening.
Right. Because when we beat ourselves up, then, like you said at the beginning, we're playing the victim, and we're taking on then a victim role mentality. And when we take on a victim role mentality, that is going to affect all of our relationships around us, right? When we show up to our relationships and we play the victim role, it is really hard to connect with people.
Yeah.
It is really hard for people to connect with you when they see that you're if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not doing the things that you're, that you say you're going to do, and you just keep playing this victim role, it's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect how you show up because you're going to have this negativity, this negative air around you because you're so down on yourself.
Yeah.
And, I'm just thinking about people recently that I've seen that you can see that around them where like how they hold themselves is very important. Like they're not standing up straight, they're hunched over, their arms are crossed because they're playing that victim role, and they keep saying, well, I can't make friends, or all these things. And yeah, I don't want to go up to you. I don't feel like you have an inviting aura around you. And so you're kind of like perpetuating it.
Absolutely.
And so it's that terrible like cycle of, and you mentioned the word energy. It's kind of like that where you don't have the energy to work out, so you don't work out, or you don't eat healthy because you don't have the energy to make healthy food. But if you don't work out, you're not going to have the energy.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to start somewhere.
You do. And it's uncomfortable in the beginning.
Yeah, it is very uncomfortable. But when you do it before tragedy hits, or when you do it before hard things, if you get into that cycle, or when you make it a habit, you're gonna see the changes. It's not gonna, like you said, it's not gonna be immediate, but a couple weeks later, you're gonna feel the difference.
Yeah.
I've been working out consistently. I've been eating healthy, and I've been sleeping really well for the last like couple months, and I can see a huge change.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think when you give yourself that compassion, when you're talking positively to yourself, you're going to notice the changes in your lives.
Yes, that is absolutely true, because the self-judgment and criticism is, and particularly when there's failures, right? When we're looking at failure as a failure and not as an educational opportunity, or keeping what's also called a growth mindset, right? But the biggest thing is that when there is something not going as planned or not as we expected, and it feels like, okay, a failure, or we're starting to criticize ourselves, that creates a threat response in our brain. Yeah. And as soon as there's a threat response, there is again chemical releases happening that make us more stressed, more anxious,
cortisol level,
tight. Lots of back pain is correlated to that as well, or other pain in the body, or high blood pressure, and other physiological changes. And as soon as we practice more self-compassion, be it with more positive self-talk, celebrating ourselves, allowing us and giving us permission ourselves, to take a break, for example, or changing the schedule and making everything a little bit more where we can feel we can handle it, we can shift out of that threat mode that the brain is in and calm basically the nervous system down that way. So at the end of the day, it really comes back to how we rewire the brain.
Yeah. And so I guess the question then is like, well, how do you start it? Like I'm in this loop of negative self-talk. I'm in this loop of victim role. And first of all, I mean, I think you have to identify, which is really hard. Like you have to identify that, okay, I'm doing this to myself. How do I pull myself out of it? And that was like that I had to realize at the beginning of the summer. I'm like, I'm doing this to myself. I am being a lot harder on myself than anyone else is being on me. Now, how do I change it? How do I move forward? And I had to really stop and recognize that I was even just starting the day being hard on myself. So it took me like, okay, every day, just saying something nice to myself, which again, we've talked about this. It sounds corny, like, like saying something nice to yourself in the mirror. But these are the things that work, because these are the things that have been proven to show that your your brain wiring will change when you start doing it consistently. So it's stopping and noticing when you're saying those things to yourself, when
Yep.
you're being hard on yourself, and stopping it and saying, okay, that's not going to help me. What can I say that's going to be
Yeah.
nicer?
Is that thought really serving me moving forward? So yes, awareness. I think that it starts totally first with self-awareness, awareness of our thoughts, like you just said, but also an awareness of our emotions. Like oftentimes we kind of neglect them in the moment, but a lot of my clients don't realize how sometimes they feel when they super stressed, but there's
Yeah.
moments even that they feel stressed or anger or frustration, and recognizing and defining a little bit more how they feel and taking a moment to think about, like, okay, why am I so frustrated right now about this? What how do I really feel about why this, whatever
Why
I
this is,
did may have not worked out as I hoped, and it feels like I failed. What is it, for example, right? What feeling is there for me in that moment? And then looking, okay, well, why is that created? And oftentimes I have to admit it myself too, is because either I compared myself with others, right?
yeah,
That external comparison, and or I had certain expectations, and those expectations might be, which is good, they should be ambitious, right? Because it's known that if we have ambitious ambition that can help us to drive for more productivity and really pull out more of ourselves,
mhm,
but it's a fine line
yeah,
where that
yeah.
ambition can also be backfiring on you because you feel just
Well,
defeated.
when you said expectations, I was thinking of expectations you have on other people. So I have
Oh,
high
yep,
expectations on how people are going to show up and how they're going to
yeah,
behave.
yep.
And so when they don't that way, then I'm mad. And it's like, okay, well, that was my own issue because I put super high expectations on you.
Oh,
And why
absolutely.
I shouldn't be putting expectations on other people.
Yes. And so it's all starts with awareness. I highly recommend to um I have actually on my phone popping up, like it says check in. So it
Mhm,
randomly shows up to like check in with myself. And it could be
mhm.
even a moment where I feel relaxed and great, but it doesn't matter. Just to practice checking in on, like, how do I feel? How do I feel right now? And it could
I
be a
used to do
moment
that
that you're
too.
feeling great, or it could be a moment that I'm somewhere and I'm like, oh, it pops up on my phone. I'm like, oh yeah, how am I right now?
I used to have that, and then I'd be like in a bad mood. I'm
Yeah.
like, shut up.
Well, that's the point though. And then after you know a little bit more how you feel, catch your negative self-talk, right? Um, and I know we talked about it too before. Journaling is a great way to reflect on it, take a
Yeah.
moment. Like I said, I think too, for me, it's in the evening sitting down. And for me, I started, just looking at the things instead of thinking, oh, I didn't get this, that done, is to go, okay, I'm celebrating myself today, putting down 3 things that I feel like, wow, I accomplished them. And
Mhm.
again, it can be a phone call I finally did that was dragged
Yeah.
out for two
I
weeks.
was really proud of myself for sending an email yesterday.
Yeah. So, and it's okay celebrating really small stuff by just writing it down. But when you are taking that little moment to acknowledge yourself for even small accomplishments. So it's that self-awareness, and then actually shifting your mindset, shifting your thoughts. And otherwise, also, obviously, any mindful practice will be very helpful. Being more present in the moment will be helpful. Meditation, or just taking a moment and just reflecting, is a big component of starting good self-compassion.
Yeah. I think, and we do talk about journaling a lot. And I think it is really just one of the most important things you can do. And it does sound corny because everyone talks about it, but it is so easy and free.
Yeah,
And
I like the
it's one, I love the free. give me the free, gonna work, gonna be immediate. Probably not, but do it consistently for 2 weeks and tell me how you feel.
Yeah.
I think just giving it a shot instead of playing the victim role, or instead of, letting that stress get to you and having it affect every aspect of your life, right? Like if we're not giving ourselves compassion and grace, and it's affecting our self-esteem, and that's going to, add to our stress level. And I'll also jump on what you said with, we compare ourselves. A lot of that is social media.
Yeah.
A lot of that is when we are on our devices and we are scrolling nonstop, and we all make the justification, well, I'm doing this, I'm working, or I'm bored, la la la. You're still comparing yourself.
Yep. We do. We do
And
up comparison and down comparison.
yeah, and it's just that's not helping. That's not helping our cause. And I say turn it off, open a book, go on a walk, do something else. Just let your brain think about positive things rather than, what's on social media.
Yeah. And just to kind of, for what I said earlier, I want to make sure too, when we check in on how we feel, even in those moments of comparison, is like not ignoring. It's okay to feel anger. It's okay to feel disappointment. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel that. We need to just
Yeah, those are
acknowledge
normal
that.
emotions.
It's because I think the biggest component is that other people all go through things as well. Now on social media, you usually only see the good stuff. They don't show most people the struggle, and it's not fun to see the struggle of other people necessarily. So to really acknowledge it's okay to feel like that, but then it's the question of, okay, so what do I do with that? Instead of
Yeah.
going into, you have the choice to go into the victim mode, or you have the choice in turning it around again with shifting your mindset, shifting your self-talk. And one other thing that I wanted to add to is it is very important that we, for self-compassion, that we have a sense of success, right? So the more things that don't go right, or not the way we want it takes a more beating on our self-esteem, and it's much harder to have self-compassion. So if we tend to, again, talking about the ambitions, I said, if we set goals that are big and too out of reach, then
Yeah.
we're setting us up for a higher chance of failure. Versus if we do small goals that we can actually reach and accomplish, then you kind of creating that um, feeling of that accomplishment, and then it's easier to practice that self-compassion. So you can set up your schedule and the things around you a little bit smarter, so
Yeah.
that the self-compassion becomes a little bit easier as well.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's important, is don't make too high.
Yeah.
Give yourself some grace and celebrate the little wins.
Yeah. And so if you're struggling with low self-esteem, start with self-compassion and really check in with yourself, celebrate yourself. And I like that one. I know it may have gone a little under, but give yourself permission to take a break. Give yourself a permission
Yeah.
to take the day off. Give yourself a permission to sit down and just read a book. Give yourself
Yep.
a permission to take your time in the bathroom. Give
Yes.
yourself permission to, which again, that's something I struggle with. I'm like, what do you mean give myself permission, but it helped me to go like, you know what? No, I deserve it. You know
Yeah.
what? It's fine. Like life is short and you deserve it, and you can give yourself permission
Yeah.
to take care of yourself more, be kind to yourself, because at the end of the day, it's fundamental for our well-being, for our health, and our relationships and productivity. So there
Love
you
it.
go.
All righty. Well,
I
that was
love
fun.
I love this because it comes up all the time, right? So if you like this, you can subscribe to our channels and check out some other videos we've done in our conversations about these type of topics. We have done episodes just about like the importance of journaling, which is
Right.
such a great tool for self-compassion. We talked
And
about
setting up boundaries.
setting a healthy boundaries, self-awareness, self-care, all of those do intertwine. And so there's lots of tools. If you want to start being more kind to yourself, go check those out. And till next time, to a great conversation.
Bye.
Bye.